Israel and Hamas have reached a deal on a ceasefire and hostages. In this video, we tell you what this deal looks like. So first things first, Israel and Hamas have agreed to a 4-day halt in their devastating war in exchange for the release of dozens of hostages taken captive on October 7th, when Israeli communities were overrun and some 240 people were abducted. The agreement will bring the first respite to war-weary Palestinians in Gaza, where more than 11,000 people, many women and children, have been killed, according to the Gaza's health authorities. It could also offer a glimmer of hope to the agonized families of those who were abducted. The deal, brokered by Qatar, the US and Egypt, was announced as fighting intensified in central neighborhoods of Gaza City. It caps weeks of fitful indirect negotiations and sets the stage for a tense period that could determine the course of the war, already in its 7th week. Israel, Hamas and Qatar have released different details of the agreement, but those details do not appear to contradict each other. So first of all, what is in this deal? Well, Qatar announced on Wednesday that Hamas will release 50 hostages in exchange for what Hamas said would be 150 Palestinian prisoners held by Israel. Those released by both sides will be women and minors. The hostages would be released in bursts throughout the 4-day ceasefire. Once the first batch is released, Israel is expected to free the first group of Palestinian prisoners. Those up for release include many teenage boys detained during a wave of violence in the West Bank in 2022 or 23 and charged with offenses such as stone throwing or disturbing public order, according to a list of eligible prisoners published by Israel's Justice Ministry on Wednesday. Israel currently holds nearly 7,000 Palestinians accused or convicted of security offenses. Israel said the truce would be extended by a day for every 10 additional hostages released. Qatar said Israel would also allow more fuel and humanitarian aid into Gaza, but did not provide any details of it. Hamas said hundreds of trucks carrying humanitarian aid and fuel are to be allowed to enter Gaza every day as part of the deal. Supplies would also reach northern Gaza, the focus of Israel's ground offensive, for the first time, according to Hamas. Israel's government statement did not refer to increased aid and fuel deliveries. An Israeli channel reported that as part of the deal, Israel will allow a significant amount of fuel and humanitarian supplies into Gaza, but did not specify how much. Israel has severely limited the amount of aid, especially fuel, allowed into Gaza during the war, prompting dire shortages of water, food and fuel to run generators. The fighting is expected to come to a temporary halt. Israeli jets and troops will hold their fire, while militants are expected to refrain from firing rockets at Israel. Hamas said Israel's warplanes will stop flying over southern Gaza during the 4-day truce and for 6 hours daily over northern Gaza. Israel made no mention of halting flights, and it wasn't clear if this would include Israel's sophisticated intelligence drones, which have been a constant presence over Gaza. Now, what exactly has been left out? While several families will be thrilled to have their loved ones back, a significant number of hostages remain in Hamas captivity, including men, women, older people and foreign nationals. The families who are not included in the current deal are likely to keep up the pressure on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to try and secure their own loved ones' release with a future deal. According to the Israel's newspaper Haaretz, under the deal, the International Committee of the Red Cross will visit remaining hostages and provide them with medicines they may need. Neither Hamas nor Israel confirmed that detail. While the ceasefire will grant Palestinians in Gaza brief calm, the hundreds of thousands who have fled the combat zone and headed south are not expected to be able to head back. Israeli troops are expected to remain in their positions in northern Gaza and are not withdrawing. So what are the possible implications of this deal? Well, the deal offers only a short break in the fighting. Israel, which has made destroying Hamas and saving the captives its war goals, is expected to continue where it left off once the 4 days wrap up. Netanyahu said on Tuesday that the ceasefire will allow the army to prepare for the continued fighting and will not harm its war efforts. Once the ceasefire ends, airstrikes will likely resume and troops will continue their push throughout northern Gaza before their expected foray into the south at an unknown time. Gaza residents will have to brace for a resumption of hostilities. Benjamin Netanyahu also told his cabinet that accepting a deal for the release of hostages taken in the Hamas attack of October 7th was a difficult decision, but it's a right decision. He added that US President Joe Biden had helped improve the framework being laid out before the cabinet to include more hostages at a lower price.
We are at war and we will continue the war. We will continue the war until we achieved all of our goals: to destroy Hamas, to bring back all the hostages and the missing, and to ensure that Gaza poses no threat to Israel. In the last few days I spoke with our friend Joe Biden and I asked for his involvement to improve the framework being laid out before you. And it has been improved to include more hostages at a lower price. These talks were fruitful. President Biden got involved in the matter and I thank him.
The deal also appears to bolster Hamas. A break in fighting would grant it time to strategize, shift around militant positions, and perhaps regroup after Israel claimed it had killed large number of Hamas fighters and destroyed many of the group's military assets. Now, the staggered nature of the deal also opens the door for Hamas to up its demand on the fly, on the assumption that Israel will make even more concessions to release more hostages. Hamas could also try to turn a 4-day pause in fighting into a longer ceasefire by offering to release more hostages. A longer ceasefire would make it harder for Israel to restart the war, both operationally and in the eyes of global public opinion. The Israeli government would face growing domestic pressure to secure the release of more hostages. Families left out of the current deal will only become more determined to see their loved ones freed once they've seen the first groups leave captivity. Thus, it will be a difficult balancing act for the Israeli government, especially since domestically many claim to have lost faith in the Prime Minister due to the October 7th attack. Do tell us what you think about this video in the comment section, and for more news updates, subscribe to India Today.